Hi, everybody, and welcome. I am Kathy O'Connell, the founder of Inclusive Wedding Planning. I'm so excited you're joining Kathy Chats, where I'm having fun talking with industry leaders, professionals, people in the know about weddings, about LGBTQ hot issues, things that'll get us, touch our hearts, touch our souls, and help us really create the lives we want. So I'm really excited you're here today. And I'm very excited today to be talking to the fantastic Renee Dalo,
Well,
who is started out as a wedding planner, but she really
mhm.
is now like a diva in charge of everything. She's a educator. She still does wedding planning, but she's an educator. She's a trainer. She's uh, an amazing human person who is really out there inspiring and helping people to create really great and amazing things. So, welcome, Renee. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, and thank you for that lovely intro. My goodness, thank you. I'm so
Well,
honored to be here.
you're an inspiration. I've heard you speak. I've heard you inspire people. And
Thank
I
you.
really wanted you to share first your story. And then
Yeah.
what I want to talk today is about how you do the 10,000 things you do to inspire people. So, but give us a little bit about your story. How did you go from, I'm not sure I even want to be a wedding planner, to doing what you're doing today?
Um, wow. Okay, so I like everything else in my life, I sort of fell into the good stuff. Um, I used to be an actor, right? So I grew up in New York City. I always wanted to be on Broadway, do musical theater. I did that for a little bit. But I never made it to Broadway. The highest up I ever got was like pre-Broadway workshops, but I did a lot of national tours. So I was on the road for years living out of a suitcase. And I was the member of the cast that if we were in a place for like a week, I'd be like, let's have a party for like the 20 of us that were in the cast. We're like, I was always like cooking meals and like making themed parties, and everyone's just like, listen, we're just like want to chill. And I was like, let's do an anything goes theme. And they were like, what the, like, what is happening? By that, I mean, anything goes the musical, you guys, like nerd, right?
Yes.
So when I moved to LA after years on tour, the idea was that I would try to be on a sitcom like everybody else comes to LA. And I realized shortly, well, it took me a couple of years though, as I was here, that I didn't really love the part of acting where I did not get to control my own destiny at all, right?
Mhm.
You're literally
Control
at the
freak,
mercy.
control freak.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I came really close to a role that would have like changed my life and didn't get it. And I just thought, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. Like I didn't think there would be a time where I would give up acting, but it definitely was like a line in the sand where I was like, yeah, no. And at the same time, I've always been this personality, and I was always the one who hosted the parties. And um when I was a poor actor, like all my poor actor friends, anytime any one of my friends got married, they would come to me and say, well, you can help me with this, right? Because like you have a background in this. And I did. My background was in fine dining, New York City restaurants where I have like incredibly high standards for everything. That was just sort of baked into my 19-year-old self because my first job ever was working for Danny Meyer.
Mm.
So I never like, for me, like waiting tables was always like a kind of elevated experience because I was always working for bosses that expected that. So when I moved to LA, I worked at a restaurant that had event spaces upstairs. So I went from like hostessing downstairs to event managing on the upstairs.
Mm.
This is all sort of coalescing and happening at once, right? Like I was still an actor and my friends were getting married and I was working these events. And I started realizing that like what I liked about the events was working with the people and creating these memorable experiences and moments, but I didn't love working at the same building like that. I'm a Gemini, right? So I like, and I was on the road for so many years. I like the variety. I like moving around. So once the acting thing got put on, to the side, I was like, okay, what do I really want to do? And I sort of just kept doing events for people that I knew and then eventually people that I didn't know, right? I was getting word of mouth referrals from other poor actors who didn't have a lot of money. And it occurred to me that like, well, it didn't occur to me. I didn't realize I was growing a business. I was just doing this thing on the side. And then I got married and we got married in Philadelphia, even though we met in Los Angeles. And my wedding planner in Philadelphia said to me, I have no idea why you're not a legitimate wedding planner in LA. And I said, don't be ridiculous. Like Mindy Weiss lives here. We've got David Tutera. Like, who's going to hire me? And she goes, everyone who can't afford Mindy Weiss and David Tutera. Like, she looked at me like, what is wrong? Like, why are you bananas? Like, of course there's a market for more than the two celebrity wedding planners you can name. And I just didn't think about it. But in that moment, or the moment after Erin said that to me, I was like, why aren't I a wedding planner? Like, what am I holding myself back for? And I think sometimes we just need that person who says, well, what about you? Right? Like,
Mhm.
that makes you go, well, yeah, well, what about me? Why can't I do this? And so then I really sort of dug in. And within 6 months after my own wedding, I launched my business. Now, what's different is that, like, a lot of times, like, especially people, who tune into your channel, when you're shopping for a wedding planner or coordinator or whatever they're called in your market, you're going to come across a lot of people who got married and then realized they were good at it and did it. In my case, that was true, but I had also been doing it non-professionally for so many years that by the time I started, I was already pretty savvy in a strange way. So I was in that place where, like, I started and I was like, but I do have experience. So it all sort of fell together. I mean, that's the shortest version I can give you, but and then it just sort of happened, right? Like, I launched my website on April 1st and I coordinated my first wedding April 7th. That's not even a joke. Like, immediately it happened because I was making friends with other wedding planners. Someone got an inquiry, hey, I'm like in a bind, I need help on Saturday. And my friend Liz was like, well, I can't do it, but I know Renee's not doing anything. And I wasn't.
Love it.
And so then I did that, and then it kind of just spiraled. I did 8 weddings my first year, and then I did 38 my second year, which I do not recommend
Fantastic.
to anyone at all. It's bad. I almost died.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So
Fantastic.
that's the real short version, which was
And then
long.
you went from there, and now you are educating and you're speaking
Yes.
and you're doing 1,000 things.
I do 1,000 things.
How do you do it all? Is my
I have a
first
lot. I have a lot of
question.
help. I have a lot of help. Like, I think that the fallacy in our current social media life is that people see me, like, with the photos and the reels and up on stages and traveling around, and, like, I have a tremendous amount of help. I have 2 assistants. I have a publicist. I have a very, very, very supportive spouse. Like, we don't have kids, you know what I mean? Like, we have help in that. We have a housekeeper. Like, we have people that help us. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do any of this. And I'm very, very, very aware of that privilege. But I do sleep. I get that question a lot. When do you sleep? I sleep a lot, because it's important to rest. But, it's also about priorities. And sometimes
Yeah.
some things have to just take the priority in a certain season and then a back seat. So, like, right now, we were talking before we recorded, like, weddings are back in full steam in LA. So, like, the education brand is taking a tiny bit to the side, going like, okay, not right now, but in a few months maybe. And it's just about trying to, I don't want to say balance, because I actually don't think balance is possible. I think it's just a give and take of everything.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm seeing this now with wedding couples as well, because we have people, and I know some of you listening are in this boat where you thought about getting married maybe in 2020, maybe in 2021. Now it's 2022, and you're like, yes, I am doing this
And we're like, oh,
thing.
sorry, we're all booked. Try 2023. You can't get married.
Exactly.
We're so sorry.
Exactly. And they're trying to do this along with back at their careers and their jobs and their worlds. And
Yeah.
any tips and advice for how does this newly excited, engaged couple figure out how to fit the rest of this in and make it happen? Because they got to work really fast.
Yeah, I would say, I think the easiest thing I say this is the easiest, but it's not easy to do, is really have a sense of, like, what you want out of this event and who you want to work with. I find, like, my couples that struggle the most with making decisions are the ones who sort of like everything, right? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
like everything and everyone, and every photographer is beautiful. And it's like, that's okay, sure. But also, like, if you have a little more of, like, black and white thinking, like, this is great, this is not, it'll be easier to make decisions and not second guess yourself, because it is, I mean, I don't want to scare anyone, right? But there is a little bit of an urgency to things these days, because there's only so many Saturdays in a row, in a year rather. And, like, not everybody works every Saturday. I certainly don't anymore. And so you kind of have to make the right choices for yourself, but make them a little more quickly than you probably are comfortable with.
I mean, it is rather insane. And I tell couples that too. The timeline has shifted.
Yeah,
I
the
mean, you may
timeline.
have to pick a venue right away. And it used to be you could take some time with vendors. But now, if you really want to get married in 2022 or even early 2023, there is absolutely some urgency about making it happen.
And I'm glad you said early 2023 because I have a couple who wants to get married in November of 2023 and they're not letting us book a date for them yet. So we have the frustration on the other side where people are like, I'd love to help you. We can't book it yet. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, we really need to get, because we can't do anything unless we have a date and a venue. So it feels like we're in a holding pattern now.
Right.
So it's like, it's like a little bit of a finesse thing where like, don't get, if you're planning on your own, especially without a planner, try not to get impatient or lose hope. There's
Great
that
advice.
middle ground there, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, you said something a minute ago that I think is really important that I always try to help couples figure out is what is the purpose for this whole event?
What is the
How
why?
do you help couples figure that out? What is the why? So talk
I
about
mean,
that and talk about how
I
you
ask,
help couples
I
because
ask
it's
my
so
couples.
important.
Yeah, I mean, I ask them in the consult, and I feel like even sometimes when I ask in the consult call, they're like, "Oh, I don't know," and it's okay not to know, but I think it's not okay to not ask yourself the question, right? Because
Hmm.
you can get married without a big wedding. You can get married without any vendors. You just need an officiant. You don't need any of the things that we spend our careers helping you manage, right? So why? Is it because you want to have a celebration and celebrate yourselves, right? Is it because after 2 years of a pandemic, you're like, F it, we're just going to go big? Are you interested in creating this new blended family, right? Or is it that you want to celebrate your family of origin and like thank them and honor them for getting you this far? Like there has to be a reason, even if you're not there yet in your head. And it might not be the same as your partner's. Like your partner might have a completely different reason for wanting to get married. That's fine. When my husband and I got married, we were older. I was 36 when we got married and he was 46. So by some like societal norms, we shouldn't have had a big wedding, right? Which I said a big middle finger
Forget
to. I was
that.
like, well, because I was like, I have waited forever to meet this person, and so has he. Neither one of us had been married before. Like, I was like, oh, we're doing it, and I'm an only child. My Italian father was like round. He was like, we're doing everything. I mean, my dad went. My dad was the bridezilla of my wedding. So for us, it was like it was a moment to celebrate not he and I, but our families and our families coming together, and our families wanted this huge celebration. I even remember in the middle of our planning, my dad got laid off from his job that he was at forever. And I said to my stepmother, are we sure about this wedding? Because I don't need it. Like I could have done without or gone to the courthouse. And my stepmother said, no, your father needs this wedding. And I said, okay, then we're
Mm-hmm.
having a wedding. And that might be
Love it.
the energy that we're in now, right? We need to celebrate now. But
Yes.
it's important to
Yes.
know. Otherwise it doesn't, you're making uninformed choices about things, right? You're
Mhm.
just doing things because it's a wedding, which who says you have to do anything that is,
Exactly. Exactly. And
standardly
especially
wedded?
with an LGBTQ couple, there are
Whatever
no
you want.
rules. My only
It's
rules
my
are, and there's
favorite
no rules
thing.
for anybody.
Yeah, when my same-sex couples come to me and say, "Hey, Renee, what are we supposed to do about blah blah?" I go, "Well, I mean, technically, you can do whatever you want. I can tell you what is the traditional etiquette, but we can also give a big middle finger to that. Like, it doesn't matter to me. Whatever you want." That's my favorite part about working with LGBTQ plus couples is that we can rewrite the rules. We often just do.
Completely.
Yeah,
Completely.
it's my favorite.
Well, and the family issue too.
Yeah,
So, let's talk about that. You were so lucky you had a family that loved and supported you and wanted to create this for
well,
you.
on one
You know,
side,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
There you
not on
go.
both sides. I mean,
Well,
it's
not everybody does,
no,
especially
everybody does.
LGBTQ couples. They've
Yeah.
got there can be family issues, there can be, extended family issues. Any suggestions on how to navigate that
I will say
process?
this. Uh, no one no one behaves better on someone's wedding day. This is what I've seen. Like if whatever the worst that person in your life is, or whatever traits, they're going to do that on your wedding day in some way, right? So like
Hmm.
no one's ever going to be on their best behavior. We want them to be and we hope that they are, but emotionally, like we have to maybe just prepare a little bit that it might not go that way. Now as a
Hmm.
planner, I want to be like the walled secure buffer around my clients to be like, if anything happens, you will not know. um but I think The couples that I've worked with that have had sort of complex family dynamics, I think the most important thing that I've seen is, as much as you can, like honest communication about what's to be expected, right? Because I know for my same-sex couples, some of the family, maybe extended family, has never experienced a same-sex wedding. So they have a lot of questions that are generally directed at me, right? That are oftentimes like, who cares, right? Like, who cares what side you sit on? But some aunt of yours is really gonna put her foot in this in the
Mhm.
dirt, in the sand about that, and be like, well, I want to sit on his side. It's like, well, there are no sides. Fine, this is his side, you sit on this side. And I try to shield that for my couples. I think the more you can communicate, right? We're doing the non-traditional thing, we're not having a sit down dinner, we're, whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think communication makes people feel like they're in the know, like they're part of it. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
listen, some family relationships, can't be fixed by a wedding, you know,
Yeah.
and that's the
Exactly.
truth. But I do think that the right people show up for you on your wedding, not
Mhm.
just physically but emotionally. And I think
Mhm.
in hindsight, I always look back at my own wedding and my clients' weddings and think like, yeah, and in the end, the right people stood up for me and were supportive of me.
Exactly. And I have couples use that to help them determine who is really making the cut.
Oh, that too.
Because really, if Aunt Sally's going to be a lot of drama,
Bye, Aunt Sally.
then Aunt Sally does not have to be on the list. It's
No,
really
certainly
okay.
does not. Certainly does
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's such an interesting thing. Well, and then the flip side of all of this with LGBTQ plus weddings is again, there are no rules. So
No,
anything goes. So what are you seeing? What are the fun and interesting and exciting and out of the box and like, I
so
can do
many.
whatever I want. What do I want to do?
We
Things
did a
happen.
wedding a couple of years ago where I mean, this is way pre-pandemic, right? Where my grooms invited several groups of their friends to do like, they weren't even readings, they were like presentations during the ceremony. The ceremony was probably about an hour long. And these super creative friends got up and did readings from like, or presentations of like lyrics from like Hedwig and the Angry It. Like they were doing like multimedia, pulling from literature and theater. And it was like amazing.
Wow.
And it was really like, because I think sometimes with weddings, we get very concerned and stuck in the details about the reception, and we sort
Mhm.
of think like the ceremony is the thing we get to before we party. And for this one, they went all in on that ceremony. It was magical. Like it was, I can't even remember all the various things that happened. Like there was easily like five different presentations, like of, and then like
Wow.
dancing and singing and like art, like painting, like it was just everything. And it was such a celebration and such like a lovely affirmation of their community of not just family but friends that were like lifting them up and supporting them in that moment. And really, when we talk about the ceremony, like what you're asking people to do is witness you, right?
Exactly.
And so this community that you've built around yourself will witness you on your wedding day and then support you throughout, hopefully.
Mhm.
So to
Mhm.
start with such an affirming celebration and ceremony was so lovely. Like it was just great.
Perfect.
And we've also
It's
done
beautiful.
like completely, on the other side of things, like completely like extroverted, like drag queen bingo, and just like completely uh, super other side of the spectrum where it's just like wild, and all your straight family members are like, what is happening? I've never seen it before, right? And like, but it's amazing and celebratory in that way. So I mean, like we've seen all of it. It's great.
Exactly. Well, and that's what makes it fun and memorable. And what I
Yeah,
always try and tell people is what is going to make this people feel like this wedding is your wedding?
your wedding.
What is it
Yes,
about you that will
yes,
people go, oh my God, we're doing Broadway theater sing along after
yes,
dinner? That
yes.
is who they
We're
are.
doing karaoke cocktail hour. Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Make it fun, make
yeah,
it fabulous, which is really the way to go. So, where do they find support? How do you suggest couples? And this goes for all couples, every one of us.
yeah,
This is a challenging, frustrating, fun, exciting, all of these motions built into one. And
yeah.
there's a point where every single wedding, I could almost predict somebody's going to crash and burn, somebody's going to melt
Yeah,
down,
yeah, no,
somebody's going to need
totally.
a really big hug.
Yeah.
So, if they don't have you and I there to give that to them, how does a couple who's doing this on their own, they get to that moment and they're like, oh, help me. How do they get that hug?
It, I mean, that's the $1 million question, right? Because I think you need to surround yourself. I always call it like team wedding, like I don't love the word. I mean, all the gendered language in our industry has just got to be done forever. So like what used to be called bridal party, wedding party, I just call them like
Mm-hmm.
team wedding, like whoever is your closest, right? There's probably an empathetic person in that circle who can give you the hug and sort of pep talk you through some things, because
Mm-hmm.
it shouldn't necessarily be your partner 100 all the time, right? I think
Right.
that's when you really start building that community around you, of supportive people who can like it takes a village. Like it takes a village to plan a wedding if you don't have a professional. um and I think like picking the right people in your circle to sort of have the certain like people to lean on is important.
Mm-hmm.
um but it has to be the right person.
Yes. Yes.
Don't
Yes.
go to
It
your
is
most
not,
dramatic
it
friend
may
with
not be
drama,
the person.
right?
Yeah. It may not
Right.
be that person who says, oh, I'm going to help you, because that
That's
person
correct.
may not be the right
You
person.
need someone with a lot of like emotional neutrality to vent
Yeah.
to. If you vent to someone who also is like histrionic and you're like, I can't believe this is happening, and they're like, we're gonna go take some people out, and it's like, no, 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 no. Like you need someone to go to who'll be like, okay, so how can we remove the emotion from this and deal with the
Right.
facts? Like you need that
Right.
sort of rational, practical
Right.
voice.
Right. Well, historically and traditionally, bridal party, especially the best people, were chosen for that role. They actually had a job.
Right.
These days, they don't have a job.
Now they just plan
They
parties.
show up and have fun.
They plan like the stag party and go about their
Right.
day.
Exactly. But historically, they actually had a job, which was
Yeah.
hand holding in some cases. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I
True.
think people they go into weddings all excited. It's like starry eyed and fun and fabulous. And it is. And we
It
never want to
is.
dampen that.
Yeah.
But there's always a point when it's like so many details that it gets to that. Okay, okay, okay. Slow down. Help me.
And I know this is going to sound self-serving because this is what we do for a living, but even if you cannot afford to work with a full service planner, please try to get someone who does wedding management, which is what I call day of coordination, just someone to help you have an outside eye to look at what you've done and say, okay, oh, you're missing something here. Have you thought about this? Because, I've done like 300 something weddings at this point. Like we've seen it all. Just
Exactly.
please try to budget for that if you can, no matter where you are in the world. I just think it's
Exactly.
important to not have to have that amount of anxiety on you, because here's the thing that no one ever really talks about when we talk about weddings. Gay couple, straight couple, doesn't matter to me. You are the couple, you are the guest of honor, and you're also the host. And that duality will never happen to you again. You will never be the host and the guest of honor at an
At the
event
same time.
again.
Exactly.
So please get someone to let you be a good
Yeah.
host.
And that's such great advice. And that's one of the things we're offering with my inclusive wedding planning program is couples can sign up for the 13 modules. I'm an odd, weird number. I like 13. So 13 modules
I love it.
to help plan the wedding, your wedding from afar.
Yes.
And when you need help finding vendors, we will reach out and help you do that. If you were in
Love that.
Arkansas, if you were in Podunk, if you were wherever, and you really decide you need some help that day, we have an extensive network and we will help people find people. I mean, that's what we want to do
Not
for you
just
guys.
coordinators, but any vendor.
Exactly.
I
We
love
will
that.
help put
I
them in
love that.
place with places to find the resources they need. And especially towards the end, I think having somebody just take it off your hands
Yeah,
and treat you like the kings and queens of your event.
it's
We all
true.
deserve to have that royal treatment event at
Yeah.
least one moment in time.
Well, I also think too the vendor selection, excuse me, the vendor selection process can be very emotional as well. Sorry, I need a water. Because even in as liberal as a city as LA, I'm in a vendor search for one of my couples right now, and I'm very clear in my initial, you know, inquiry to the venue, like this is a same-sex couple. And I have a very, 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 very well-known venue in LA that will not write me back.
Hmm.
And they've written me back about other events. And so what's different about this one?
Yeah,
And I'm about
absolutely.
5 minutes away from like burning it all to the ground, but I am that buffer, right? Um, if it is what I'm thinking it is, my clients will never, I will not put that on my clients, right? I am the
Mhm.
buffer there. So they don't have to have that horrible feeling in their gut about like, are you kidding? I mean,
Right.
I will likely tell them to not give that establishment any of their hard-earned dollars on a day-to-day. But I think that it's important to have that shield from something that might be upsetting.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a, nobody wants to, as I was talking to somebody the other day, said, when you're calling vendors and you don't know if they're going to take you or not, it's like coming out every time over and over and
Yeah,
over
it's
again.
dramatic for sure.
And it was dramatic the first time, and it can be dramatic on, and we don't want to create that
I
experience.
was reading an article a couple of weeks ago. I forgot where it was. I think it wasn't an art. It was like a memoir piece where the writer said like I think I've estimated that I've had to come out something like 2,000 times in my life.
Wow.
And I literally had like a pain in my chest. I was like,
Wow.
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 Every new job, every new person you meet, every business
Right.
relationship,
Right.
everything. And I think
Right.
many straight vendors don't have that awareness that
Right.
that it's not just about I don't want to serve you, which is gross and horrible in the first place, but then the having to explain and come out. It's yeah.
Right.
I would like
And
to.
it's just the assumptions. It's the not asking questions. I mean,
Right.
I cannot tell you how many times I check into a hotel with my wife and they assume we're sisters. Every single, I mean, we look nothing alike. And, I could say, oh, isn't that funny? Ha ha ha. But you know what? It's insulting at the same time. It's
Well,
not
and
seeing me for who I am.
of course, and also can we talk about assumptions for a sec? Because
Yeah.
I worked with a couple of years ago who, um, by all presentation, looked like a straight couple, right? And we went about hiring their vendors, and they found a band that they really liked that I had not worked with. We booked them. Everything was great. Uh, my clients were happy with their performance. The wedding photos came back. My client said, "We'd love to get this published. We want to get it published in like Equally Wed or Love Inc., like an LGBTQ blog."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Great," because I've learned over the years never assume anything about anyone.
Right.
And as a condition of being published in Love Inc., the vendors had to sign like an oath, and the band wouldn't sign it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know. I didn't know to ask, but also
Right.
I am in this liberal bubble of LA where I just
Yes.
assume why wouldn't
Yes.
they? And I was shocked and very disappointed and also kind of ashamed about the whole thing because I felt like I didn't create a safe enough space for that client to tell me
Right.
who they
Yeah.
were. And I learned a lot from all of that. I learned that I'm never working with that band again. Um, but we all made an assumption about this couple,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And
Just
yeah,
It's
don't
just
assume.
about asking questions. It's just about
Yeah.
asking questions, about asking pronouns.
Yeah.
Pronouns tell a lot
Yep.
about having that be part of every single questionnaire, every single dialogue, and then acknowledging when we make a mistake. I mean, because that's the other piece that we are all going to blow it. I mean, I'm in this world and I blow it all the time.
Oh yeah.
I'm
I
like,
remember
okay, wait,
a couple years
sorry, I used the
ago,
wrong.
and I thought I had gone over all of my contracts because when you start a wedding planning business, for those of you who are just like potential, married, almost married couples on this, listening to this, when you start a wedding planning business, you buy a lot of templates, right? And 10 years ago when I started, they all said bride and groom. So my contract said bride and groom, my proposal said bride and groom. And, a couple years in, I was like, this is dumb. Why am I? And I went in and I thought I had scrubbed all the gender from my language. I sent my contract to a same-sex couple, two grooms, and they were back to me and said, we can't work with you. And I was like, okay. And they said, your contract has the word bride in it. And it was just once. And it was,
Oh,
the terminology was like helping the bride, like fluff her train if applicable. And they were like, we just don't feel comfortable. And I was like, that's fair. Like
yeah.
was it harsh? Yeah. But did I deserve it? I mean, yeah. Right. And so I thought, I said, I'm so sorry. Like I honestly didn't see it in there. And I immediately changed it, but they found another wedding planner that didn't, that didn't have any of that didn't have that particular red flag. And I
Mhm.
honestly kind of admired that they called me out on it, honestly,
Yeah. And stuck to it.
and stuck to it. Yeah. I mean, I
Well,
was sad not to have worked with them, but I was like, what? I ran to my contract and I was like, oh my God. Yeah. We're all learning
Well,
every day.
and we also make mistakes. We just did the same thing. I mean, here I am. I'm part of the LGBTQ plus community. I have templates for wedding ceremonies. I actually started out in this business marrying people. I have my doctorate in divinity, and that's what I started out doing.
Nice.
Still love it. Don't do it that often anymore. But I have a lot of templates I share with people. And I had a groom and groom template for a couple of guys who are getting married. It's all saved on docs. My assistant sent it off, and there was one place in there we still had the word bride years later, and I was like,
Yes, later.
"Oh my god!" And I caught it. Thank God they'd already seen it. But I said, "Okay, I'm sorry. We'll
I
fix
mean,
it."
and also like so a lot of my couples don't really want to be called bride or groom.
Right.
Like they partners or marriers, like they just want something completely gender neutral, and like I'd love to see that become the standard for
Norm.
everyone, because it's
Yeah.
really like who really bride, like a sweatshirt with bride on it. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. Things are changing. We're getting
Yeah.
there slowly but
Yeah.
slowly. So, any other last advice? What would you tell these fabulous couples who are just getting started, trying to figure it out? What would you tell them?
I would say honestly, do whatever you want, just communicate it to people. I mean,
Hmm.
that's I think where when we do untraditional things, or and not even non-traditional things, I think every family of origin has unspoken expectations for how this day is supposed to go in their brains that they might not tell you until you say something like, "We're not going to have a cake, we're going to have donuts." And then your mother is like freaking out that there's no
What?
cake. How dare you not have a cake? And you're like, "Why is this a thing?"
Yeah.
Communicate. Communicate, 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 communicate. Just keep talking,
Hmm.
right? And keep
Yep.
asking the people that are important to you what's important to them. I'm
Yes.
of the mindset that like there were things at my wedding that my father really wanted that I could have cared less about, honestly. We had a Ben Franklin impersonator at my cocktail hour because we got married in Philadelphia, directly across the street from the Liberty Bell. And my dad saw on the venue contract under their preferred vendors that they had a whole section of Ben Franklins. And immediately he was like, "We need that." And I was like, "We really don't need that. I am not interested in that." So he's probably going to see this one day. So I told him that there were no Ben Franklins available that weekend because it was Columbus Day weekend. Full lie, flat out lie. 2 weeks before my wedding, I was leaving the gym like early in the morning here, and he's in Connecticut. And he called me, "Guess what? Guess what? Great news." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "I found a Ben Franklin." Like, "You did?" He's like, "And I paid him, and he's already booked. I paid him in full. He's gonna be great. He's coming to cocktail hour." And I was like, "Okay,
Okay, Dad.
yeah, sure." And guests went crazy. They loved him. I wasn't at my cocktail hour really, so I don't remember, but he wanted it. No skin off my nose, Dad, have the Ben Franklin.
Yeah.
And sometimes I
Yeah.
think it all becomes easier if you give a little, if it doesn't matter to you, but make sure the things that you really want are the way you want them. And that's just communication. It
Yeah.
sounds simple, but it's
Fantastic.
not really easy to do.
Absolutely fantastic advice. And that goes for the couple talking to each other too.
Yes.
Because sometimes one person does more of the talking. In every couple,
Yeah,
somebody who has more
every
ideas,
couple. In every
the
couple.
other party has to be listened to. And I think that if you're the talker, I'm the talker, it means taking the time to just slow down and say, "Hey, honey, this is what I really, really want. But what do you want? Do you really care about this? Are you just saying yes to
Yeah.
be nice? And then is it going to come around and bite us later?"
And years later, I didn't even want to have ribs at the rehearsal dinner. And you're like, "Oh, I don't, okay."
20 years later.
I would say this is actually, aside from the communication, which I do still, make sure you're booking vendors that you really like
Mm,
personally
great advice.
as human beings, right? Because especially for your photographer, they're with you all day. And if you can't stand them or couldn't feel like you could get a coffee and sit down and have a chat with them, please don't book them. Your wedding day is
Yeah.
too important. It's too important.
Yeah. Yeah, great, great, great advice. We're creating a team. We're creating a
Yes.
team to support these people, which is great. Well, Renee, you have been so wonderful, so inspiring. If you're getting married in LA, Moxie Bride Events, check in
Yes.
with
Yes.
Renee. She's fantastic. We'll add her link to the YouTube channel we posted. And if you really want more help, especially if you're not in California and you can't hire one of us to be your wedding planner, inclusiveweddingplanning.com. It's launching soon. And please sign up. We're here to help you. We're here to support you. We're here to give you advice. And stay tuned for more Kathy Chats while we have fun talking with amazing, wonderful people. So thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Renee. I will see you in Cyberland, if not before. Big hugs until we do.
Yes, see you soon. Bye.